We'll count up here for Cecil to be able to do a little snip, snip. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. This is always fun. Always fun to have an excuse to get together with our favorite people in the world. And you, if you are hearing the sound of my voice, you are among them. So let's go ahead and we will jump in. Hey, everybody. We're back for another installment of our 2020 season in review, going division by division, joined by some of our most esteemed friends. Today we'll have Bob Harris joining us on the AFC East. Before we get into the AFC East, though, I want to remind you, 'tis the playoffs, and to celebrate, all new players can play free for the $1 million top prize with your first deposit, thanks to our partnership with DraftKings. Create your DraftKings DFS account, make a deposit. DraftKings will credit your account with a free contest entry. You will draft your lineup and compete for millions. Go to dkng.co/FBGMillie to play. That's dkng.co/FBGMillie. Act quickly. This offer ends after the playoffs. Minimum $5 deposit. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for more details. Bob, we're going to start. I go in alphabetical order.
Sig.
Yeah, it's good to have you back, Bob, by the way. It's always good. Time spent together is always time well spent. And we start alphabetically. And really, we could maybe spend a whole half hour talking about Josh Allen. And talking about the striking transformation of him, of this offense. We'll see where Brian Dable lands next, maybe with the Chargers and Justin Herbert. That would be exciting. In the years you've been doing this, how stunning was this turnaround, and how sure are you that it's going to stick?
First of all, anytime I talk about the Buffalo Bills, I start out with an apology to both Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs for thinking they could not get it together. More to Stephon Diggs. I totally disrespected you, Stephon, and I apologize. But part of that was not thinking, it was buying into the whole notion that, people are a thing and they never evolve. They don't change. They don't improve, right? We questioned the accuracy and some of the things and like he got better. Is this totally shocking? I mean, yes, accuracy is maybe something that, you have to kind of come with, but it's also apparently something you can work on. We all knew the good parts of him, and we were still drafting the good parts of him, the mobility, the fact that he's probably, along with Lamar Jackson, still among quarterbacks, his team's best running back, or at least his, the most dangerous. And so I think that gave him a ton of value. He has added immensely to it this year. I think there will be people who have him in the conversation for QB1 this year. Going into drafts, and it's understandable. I think a big question will be Brian Dable's future. Credit to him as well for, obviously being part of that improvement, identifying the things that he does well or can do well and focusing on them. But the arm talent is the thing that, some of the throws, I mean, even watching last week's game, some of the throws he's making at the sidelines on the run, he has no business making those throws. Right. Nobody has any business making those throws. And it's pretty damn impressive. And I think that arm talent is something that you can hang your hat on beyond the mobility, clearly. And now that he has the weapons, and we're going to talk about the weapons, but, right. I don't know that there's a weakness in this passing attack at the moment. And I can only see it getting better. And that's kind of scary.
It is scary in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to take a moment out to say, too, and I am included in this group, Bob. Fantasy football is fun in a way that it creates a different set of meanings for football events. And the Monday night game, Diggs and Josh Allen won fantasy titles for a lot of people in Week 16, myself included, against some long odds, too. I guess you could say they lost a lot of titles for people. But it was beautiful. I've said this on the show before. I'll say it again. It was beautiful that folks who didn't. I was the same way. I mean, I had Diggs as like a 6th round pick, Josh Allen like quarterback 8. I didn't put these pieces together. And the thing is, we have to give credit again to Brian Dable. And the next time someone says it's impossible for a team to do a 180 in offensive philosophy over one offseason if they're not changing coaches, no. I mean, we saw that, and we saw all the fantasy goodness, all the fruit that it bore, being rewarded in fantasy football for believing in those players, for believing in this team. felt like justice. And we'll see. Like you said, he's going to be in the quarterback one conversation, and everyone's coming back next year except maybe John Brown. But and the thing is, I'm skipping. Go ahead.
I missed him this year.
I know.
Player in the NFL. I always joke. I always pick some random, but he is truly a unique talent with a unique skill set, and it's called being really fast. Yeah. And there's something to be said for that, especially in this offense. Something you mentioned about that Monday night game, Sig, that really stuck out to me. And look, we went into this kind of I went into this with a kind of a set of presumptions, things that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to count on players who have made moves to new teams. Yeah, I thought that in the environment where there wasn't any direct interaction and everything was going to be learned virtually, all those things, I thought it would be a wise choice. In the end, I ended up still with a ton of Robbie Anderson because the price was so cheap, less so Stephon Diggs. But one thing you mentioned about that Monday night game, and I was on the air covering on Sirius, and I mean, people calling in saying, "I just won." I mean, it was an amazing, really super exciting night. But I thought watching the interview with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs after that game spoke volumes, man. You can see they're friends. They spend hours playing video games together. I mean, they're just in lockstep. And I think these are the kind of things that, add a little something and put a little, dip of chocolate fudge on the top of that productive Sunday that we all enjoyed. And I think it's worth noting. And it's something that, clearly they're going to keep building on.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And that's the thing, as we're in the midst of the playoffs, and my heart is with the Bills now, but there's a lot better times to come. We won't even really talk about the running game. Zach Moss, 3rd-round pick.
There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Devin Singletary. Allen. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to take a Bills running back high next year because we know the offense runs through Josh Allen. Unless. I
mean, the Bills have been players in free agency, right? The last couple of years, you hear names mentioned. I mean, we're going to see Aaron Jones out there. We're going to see Chris Carson out there. We're going to see and somebody's going to overpay for those guys. And if it was Buffalo, it would be kind of exciting.
Yeah, it would be. And especially if it's someone who can contribute in the receiving game.
Yeah.
And which Devin Singletary can. I mean, the Devin Singletary ends up being one of the busts of the season. Sure. It goes from 5th-round pick-ish, and he looked good at the end of the year last year to not really having much value, but that didn't mean Zach Moss was a hit. And by the way, real quick, just one last thing to contribute, because I've been following Josh Allen's career closely. It's one of the few people on Josh Allen Island back when he was drafted. It was the inner calm. Something happened between last year and this year.
Yes.
That it's Patrick Mahomes' inner calm, and that's what allows him to make those low percentage plays that only he could make, just like Patrick Mahomes. That he's trusting himself. He's letting the game come to him. We saw him tighten up a little bit in October, but now it's just coming so naturally.
Requires a bit of zen. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I mean, just man, some of those sideline throws, especially last game. I mean, just no business. No business hitting those, especially on the move he was. And you look at that receiving core. I mean, beyond the top names. I mean, even go down to. I mean, if Gabriel Davis you mentioned, but even Isaiah McKenzie will turn up if he needs to. They have Andre Roberts there, but I mean that top core, that Beasley Diggs duo. Man, that's going to make some hay for a long time. John Brown's part of that mix. He's going to be too. And I think we need to realize as well, you think what tight end, but Dawson Knox was a pretty rough prospect coming in, right? What do you have, like 30 catches in college or something ridiculous? I mean, he's a work in progress, and I think people shouldn't overlook that.
Yeah, and people won't overlook Cole Beasley, who, by the way, Brandon Beane, right? Like, this is a
great job by him too.
Yeah, because you sign Cole Beasley, you sign John Brown, you make a big trade for Stephon Diggs, and now all of a sudden Josh Allen is one of the most dangerous passing quarterbacks in the league. And he's confident, and they've rebuilt the offensive line in 2 years. So as teams are adding new GMs, adding new head coaches, adding new position coaches as we speak, it can be done. It can, and this has been a 5-year program. It's culminated over a long period. But what they've built around Josh Allen, which also has just been, I mean, Josh Allen is one of the guys now that everything he touches turns to fantasy gold, which is why Dawson Knox is so interesting, hyper athletic. He scored, I don't know the exact numbers, but something like 4 touchdowns in the last 6 games or something like that. Look, if you, as a fantasy tight end at this point, if you get 6 or 8 touchdowns, it doesn't really even matter what else you do. So Dawson Knox is absolutely getting a little bit out of the shadow of DK Metcalf and AJ Brown. People know his name now.
Yes.
Bills being rewarded for kind of an aspirational pick, hyper athletic, couldn't really stay healthy.
That was the guy the Patriots were all over too. I mean, he really made us show at the combine and didn't have the production in college to back it up, but people were willing to gamble a little bit. And I thought it would be the Patriots, but it ended up being the Bills.
Yeah, and then the Patriots. We'll talk about them and the Titans. Well, but that's the thing, right? So like now we're past the exciting offensive part of this division, right? I'm sorry to do this to you, Bob. It's just kind of the luck of the draw on divisions, but there's still stuff to talk about. I guess if we lead off with Miami, we're kind of doing more crystal ball stuff. Like, are they going to look at quarterbacks? Are they going to maybe trade for Deshaun Watson? Or should Dolphins fans get used to the idea of Tua and the limitations we saw? Maybe he'll grow out of them in 2020.
Yeah, I think that's the question, right? And so that's the first thing we have to answer is Chris Greer being honest with us when he says that they've decided that Tua Tagovailoa is their quarterback of the
Josh
future.
Rosen is our quarterback.
Right. I've seen this movie before. And so right. I think this is a fair question, especially in light of Armando Sarguello's article in the Herald yesterday. Players are already talking. Look, I have a great deal. I like the Brian Flores thing. I like what he's building there. But clearly the roots have not taken hold if you have players talking to Armando Salguero, telling him, we're not sure this guy's the quarterback, days after the GM says this guy's the quarterback. So we'll see what's going on. And look, if he is the quarterback, they have some draft capital to build. They have a ton of needs. I would, as a fantasy person, say wide receiver first. Yeah. And there's a couple of Alabama wide receivers that might be available. And that would make perfect sense to grab one of those guys, two of those guys, 10 of those guys, whatever. We'll see. Watching Tua, I don't know what are our expectations now. The bar has been reset. Thanks, Justin Herbert.
Right.
And some of these other young players we've seen come in and fare reasonably well. Tua didn't, but he was coming off of, the hip issue.
Yep.
All these things. I mean, if you're investing in him, I don't see investing in him in 1 year knowing where he was coming from. Right. So, and my sense of Brian Flores and the way he's building this organization is not that they'll give up on a guy in a year. Right. But like, I didn't think the Cardinals would either until all of a sudden Cliff Kingsbury.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, things can happen quickly.
And they'll have a new offensive coordinator. I don't know how much of a voice offensive coordinator will have.
That'll be the third one in 3 years too. Exactly. That's a bit of a bit interesting.
So with Tua, I mean, with what you saw with Tua compared to Alabama Tua, and maybe it is coming back from the hip injury, you're just like a half beat behind. It's just not. And that as we've talked about other players we were talking about Jonathan Taylor, Matthew Freeman yesterday. He looked like a rookie for a little bit. Well, Tua Tagovailoa looked like a rookie, and I guess it's our expectations that when a rookie looks like a rookie, a highly drafted rookie, nonetheless, we say, "Come on." You look at Justin Jefferson. Look at these players that are stepping on the field and immediately don't look like rookies. Myles Gaskin wasn't a rookie, second-year player, but actually, he did some things. It's in Week 16. If you trusted him, he might have been the reason you won your title. Right. That being said, Dolphins last year, everyone had them taking a running back, and they didn't. They might for Matt Breida this year. This is the year. They did. It would not surprise me.
I talked to Alan Poupart from SI last week, and I mean, he's talked about all the needs, but he said, don't be surprised. I mean, and I think the thing you hang your hat on here is if they decide they have a running back, they'll commit to him.
Right.
Right. And so, that's kind of what you're looking for, I think, along these lines. I think, I'm old enough to remember, and I'm fine dating myself because everyone knows I'm very old. But when quarterbacks were drafted and they weren't expected to play, they sat and watched. I mean, and I can say that as recently as Patrick Mahomes, right? Sure. So I guess I'm not that old. But now it seems like there's a different, expectation. And I get it. Like if you have that rookie quarterback come in or that first quarterback come in on his first contract and you get that success, you're able to you have so much more flexibility with the cap to build around him when they're on that first contract that you're not going to have after that. And so I kind of get that. But I think at running back is a position where the Dolphins have, kind of shotgunned it. They had some success with a guy that they didn't break the bank for. Right. I wonder if that won't be their way forward going ahead.
Yeah, and we'll see. Maybe they can bring someone in free agency,
sure,
with an expensive contract. They have options. It's good to be a buyer in the running back market, whether
I
it's
look at
draft or
this year's class, and I see a lot of Matt Breidas, and I see, not high end guys. There's like 2 or 3 high end guys, or guys that I would consider that. And if you don't want to break the bank, which makes no sense, right? I mean, I think we've all learned the lesson there that you're not going to see guys making the big money anymore. So if you don't get one of the top couple names on a bargain price, and like Kenyon Drake, I mean, coming off the transition tag for $8 million, I mean, he's going to want that money. Is he really worth that?
Right. I think a lot of running backs are going to have a rude awakening when they see what the market gives them. I even think like a Melvin Gordon 2019 contract might be hard to come by.
I think so too.
Now, wide receiver, something to file away. Preston Williams looked like he was going to be Tua Tagovailoa's number 1 when he went down. And poor Preston Williams, because twice now he's had a catastrophic injury during his breakout game. We also saw Devontae Parker go back to his staying on the injury report, not being able to be trusted. Not that we were that excited about this offense anyway, but like you said, we might see Devontae Smith be the pick at number 3.
Right.
So a lot of uncertainty.
Waddle, or
exactly. They have 18.
Right.
So
I think 3 is too early for Smith. So and I don't know that 18 is going to work for Smith. So
we'll see, but change probably coming at wide receiver. Also, that somewhat insignificant Lynn Bowden trade right before the season, he was making some plays, doing some things. He's going to stick. He's going to stick. I guess maybe one of the more interesting guys going forward here will be Mike Gesicki. And depending on what you see game to game, in one game you might say, well, he's just blending in with Durham Smythe and Adam Shaheen, who they did again quietly sign to an extension during the season. They got a lot more out of Shaheen than the Bears did. And then there's Mike Gesicki, who in other games looks like a foundational piece of the pass offense, and you see his athleticism. Some of the plays, like the one-handed catch he made, was it Oronde Gadsden? That they compare, just like an iconic Dolphins play. Right. And the Dolphins fell short of the play. By the way, part of the season review, they fell short of the playoffs, but they're still ahead of schedule as an organization.
Not for nothing. I mean, part of Gesicki's future is going to be the new offensive coordinator, right? I mean, well, that'll be determined. I thought Chan Gailey was a great guy for him because he uses those 4 wide sets and the slot work for Gesicki. So I'm just now Ian Rappaport tweeted out the list of candidates. Clemson's offensive coordinator, Tony Elliott, quarterbacks coach from the Chargers, Pep Hamilton. That's kind of intriguing. 49ers run game coordinator, Mike McDaniel, Matt Canada, the Steelers QB's coach, Dolphins running backs coach, Eric Studesville, which I've heard that one before as well. Yeah. And George Godsey, I've heard as well, who's been, around kind of the Patriots and Texans kind of guy. So some of that will depend for Gesicki. I mean, an athletic freak who they just don't seem to maximize that athleticism at all times. But we've seen flashes of it. So I think this tight end C is so shallow, right? I mean, so anyone who has that kind of ability is going to kind of stand out a little bit, or at least have your interest.
At least there's a chance he'll have a 100-yard game. There's a chance that he'll have a big game with Gesicki, and a lot of interesting names there as the Dolphins and Steelers fired their offensive coordinator this morning.
We'll see.
Yeah, but thankfully, I'm saying that as a bitter Steelers fan.
I know.
Matt Canada can be that, but
Yinzers.
Yeah, well, Yinzer from birth to death, no matter where we are. That's okay. For now, I'm adopting the Bills. So look, so we'll see, and certainly the name that stood out when you gave me that list, Bob, it was Pep. Because every account puts Pep at the center of Justin Herbert's success. That they hired him to groom Herbert. So
seen him as the head coach in the AF or was it the XFL? Or which was it? I don't know.
It's all together. We're out of 2020 and it's all just blending together now. So we'll see looking forward on Miami, but if you're a Miami Dolphins fan, it's exciting. Hey, there's still some chance. And by the way, the new OC I think is going to be the key here to understanding whether we're going to be interested in this passing game, and to still like some tiny insignificant chance maybe that Sean Watson gets traded there. We'll see. Let's move to
nothing better than an agent calling up Chris Mortensen and getting his client's wish list out there really quick.
Yes. And that's probably, I mean, I think it's pretty clearly from what I'm hearing that if Watson's traded, Miami, I mean, there's a reason that Miami was singled out whenever Mortensen got that information. And we'll see. The Texans have made for great reality show content unless you're a Texans fan.
See if they can get back in the lane.
The Patriots as a reality show were just too depressing to even watch at times. I'm not even sure what to say, Bob. I mean,
they have no playmakers.
Yeah, I feel like they have no identity.
Yeah, they have no identity, no playmakers. I don't know. I mean, Damian Harris looked serviceable,
right?
At times. The receiving core does not. I mean, no consistently high-end playmakers. I think Julian Edelman's at the end of his run. I don't think their quarterback is on their team.
Right.
Look, a lot of things could change, right? Like, would you be like entirely shocked if next week 1 Jimmy Garoppolo was under center for the Patriots, right? So, I mean, anything and everything is on the table for that team. I can't see them, standing still. And so a lot of this is going to be on Bill Belichick. We mentioned the Texans, Nick Caserio leaving New England for the Texans, and they're not the Patriots South. Don't believe that.
Right. I just don't even know what to say here because, like you said, I mean, Newton. It sounds like Newton would like to come back.
Yeah, but and he might. Mike Reese said he might. Right? Put it at like a 25% chance. I mean, I think that's more of a chance than I would have given him.
Yes, Mike Reese putting 25% was higher than I would have put it at. And we had that brief shining moment of that week 2 game with Seattle.
Yeah,
and it was like.
Hit long passes and things happened. It was
really incredible. Good. It was a classic quarterback duel.
I think you
just saw his physical limitations. I think he saw his physical limitations, and that because of those physical limitations, he can't uplift a group. I mean, this is worse than any group he had in Carolina, but it wasn't like he had great groups in Carolina either. But like you said, it's a franchise at a crossroads. There's not a lot to talk about for fantasy. I mean, Sony Michel at least showed a little bit, but he's never going to be the Sony Michel he was in college. Damian Harris, you mentioned. If there was a good defense where they could get these guys combined like 30, 35 carries a game, but the defense is falling apart.
James White who was a reliable component here, no matter what else was going on with the offense. You could always say, "Wow, I get at least a nice PPR floor with James White." That seems that ship has sailed. The tight end position has always been a mainstay there. Devin Asiasi. I don't even know if I can name them all.
Yeah, Jacoby Myers is a useful player, but not a foundational player in any NFL passing game.
I mean, N'Keal Harry, we can kind of say that was a failed pick, I think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if they can get somebody, maybe if they brought in Matthew Stafford, who's used to throwing to Kenny Golladay and Calvin Johnson, that could unlock a little bit of N'Keal Harry. But come on,
I think that's the crux of the issue here is what happens at quarterback. The whole Patriots universe is going to swirl on that. And, is this a long-term rebuild? Is that something Bill Belichick's on board for? I don't know.
Is that something even that, I mean, not fun. You get the feeling watching Belichick, Bob, I thought he might really start to cry during I don't remember which game it was. Maybe it was the game they were eliminated from the playoffs.
The one where he threw the phone?
Well, I don't know if that was the same game, but on the Zoom, he was like, we didn't coach well, we didn't play well, we didn't do anything well, and you could tell he was thinking about himself. I mean, he was thinking about how everything that he applied to this team this year just resulted in failure. And rebuild. Belichick overseeing a rebuild now. Well, we'll see. They got a Joe Thuney decision to make. They're not bringing him back. Thuney's going to be a big catch for somebody. David Andrews, maybe they'll bring back. So, the offensive line, at least they got Onwenu.
Don't you feel like, the question that, we all asked heading into the season, was it Brady or was it Belichick? I don't think Belichick's going to be satisfied with the answer that it was Brady.
Well, that's fair. And that's interesting to think about, too, that that narrative is feeding this, right? Because now at this point in the race, it's clearly Brady is feeling good about who gets more credit for the great dynasty. At the same time, Belichick is going to make it. It's interesting that, like, one week he says, we're not making excuses. And the next week he says, well, after everything we spent and everything we gave up, what do you expect? I feel like he was a little rattled by it. And it's funny, too, because after the Steelers game, Bob, a lot of Patriots fans from my mentions, like, now you know how we feel. Just knowing it's over. It's over. I mean, the glory that came out of this great period.
I mean, it will go down as one of the greatest dynasties in NFL history, if not the greatest, and who gets credit for it in the end is going to be determined this year, next year, maybe, so, I mean, we'll see. But I mean, Belichick maybe has the longer term horizon to get back on track than, Brady, but Brady's early success is, bodes well for him.
Absolutely. And we'll see what happens Sunday evening in an excellent round 3. And then we get to the Jets.
Nah.
I mean, at least they got Gase fired. At least they didn't get the number 1 pick. They didn't even succeed at losing, Bob. But
in the games they won, they looked so fantastic, right?
They beat the Rams. The Rams could legit win the Super Bowl.
The Rams.
Right. I mean, the Rams could legit win the Super Bowl, right, Bob? Like, if we ran 1,000 simulations of the next 2 rounds of the playoffs in the Super Bowl, the Rams probably win like 3 or 4 out of the 1,000.
Defense wins championships, then they win more than that, right? So.
And the Jets beat them. And yeah, and the Jets beat the Browns too. The Jets beat 2 of the teams that are still alive in the playoffs. Wild season. We have no idea who they're going to hire. I mean, they got the second interview with Robert Saleh. So, and I look for the same reasons, and what for fantasy, I don't even know what to talk about here.
No, I mean, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. We don't know who the running backs are going to be. We know that they have some, a young wide receiver.
They have Denzel Mims. Yeah,
they have Denzel Mims. I don't know what Chris Herndon. I had Brian Costello from the Post on, this week, and that was basically his thing. I mean, there's just not a lot to build around, right? You don't, until we know what the coach is, who the quarterback's going to be. I mean, Joe Douglas is, widely respected. He's going to have to show us all why he's earned that respect. Right.
Exactly. He's going to pick his head coach and maybe pick his quarterback. And we'll see about Sam Darnold.
I think Darnold is done, honestly.
Well, and
I think he was done when he saw the ghost. I mean, that felt like the beginning of the end for him, and it's never been on track since. And I think, for all involved, it seems like it'd be wise to move on. And look, they could still get a really good quarterback with that second draft pick.
Yeah. By the way, Andrew Frost in the chat room pointed out the Patriots were hit pretty hard. The defense for sure on the opt-outs. And we'll see, those guys are going to come back. Yeah, Dante Hightower. But you go back to the Jets here, and I mean, what do they have to build around? I mean, Mekhi Becton was a good pick. He looks like he could be, I don't want to say, when I say names like Orlando Pace or something like that, I mean, he's that kind of physical presence on the field. They traded away Jamal Adams. They have some extra first-round picks. Denzel Mims, we saw little glimpses of. Actually, I thought, again, like Brashad Perryman, when he's healthy, that's the big caveat, looks like a starting quality NFL receiver. Jamison Crowder, I mean, if there was anybody for fantasy that made a ripple here. And Chris Herndon, there's the Adam Gase effect. Like, this whole team could have the Adam Gase effect next year, right?
Sure.
And if we hear in the next couple of days, Bob, that it's Robert Saleh, I like that hire for the same reason I would have liked him for Detroit.
Dynamic young guy with a lot of energy.
And repairing relationships.
Sure.
Repairing culture.
Right. We saw the Lions do that this morning with Brad Holmes,
Yes.
As their GM, a guy that was on the forefront of the social justice issues for the Rams, and now they bring him in there. So, but I think you're right. Building a culture is going to be important, and having a high energy, young guy in there. Yep. I mean, Adam Gase, I don't know, was not that guy.
No. I mean, look, we're probably going to be, is a Gase going to go to like Alabama or something? I don't know. Like, we're not going to be able, this isn't like Richard Nixon. Like, we're still going to have Adam Gase to kick around in some way, shape, or form. But I think that people need to understand, like, much like when Bill O'Brien was fired, and Bill O'Brien, you can talk about the success he had as a coach as far as going to the playoffs, things like that. But Gase was as bad as it seemed. I mean, from a personal level, from a people skills level.
The only thing Gase works for is slot receivers. Right? I mean, Jarvis Landry, Jamison Crowder, they're loving life. Everyone else is just going, what the hell do we need to do to get on the good side of this guy?
Yeah. And I mean, there was stuff we learned during the season, Bob, that matched. This is one of those things where I like to tell people, like, it isn't every organization. It might only be one organization, but don't limit your imagination on the malpractice that happens on a daily basis in the NFL. And we were hearing things like he and Loganes, they make the play script for the next series, like during the series before, and it's not quite clear who calls plays. Sometimes it
is clear. The last success that Adam Gase had outside of interviews for head coaching jobs was with Peyton Manning as his quarterback. And I mean, having success as a play caller with Peyton Manning as your quarterback is kind of like an advantage, right? But look, I've heard, people who are been close to these processes have said it over and over. He's good in interviews. he convinces, he's a salesman, which seems odd because he has never sold me anything. You look at him at press conference, you go, what the hell, man?
Exactly. He doesn't sell it to the players. He doesn't sell it to the fans. He doesn't sell it to the media. He just sells it. And I suppose when we talk about NFL owners, because those are the people you have to impress, right?
Yeah.
There's a certain psychology that you can imagine. I mean, this whole Jack Easterby situation down in Houston, there's a certain psychology that clicks with owners that might be really out of touch with everybody else. So yeah, Herndon showed a little bit of sign of life. They've got to get a new head coach. They're going to have, as far as free agency decisions, they have like Marcus May, but nothing too big. I mean, this team is in a rebuild. They have a lot of picks. And like you said, Joe Douglas is the name here. He's the captain of the ship now. And we'll see. Before we head off back into our lives, Bob, I've got to ask: is anybody? I keep talking about the Bills. Is anybody capturing your heart? Do you have any rooting interest, or is anything really compelling to you as we go to the divisional round?
I always use the same old saying: I hate all the teams equally. So it's a bit of a great plus for me. But my friend Nick Bakay is a long-suffering Bills fan, and I would love to see some success for him and all the Bills fans who have, been long-suffering. I know Cleveland Browns fans, you've been long-suffering as well. Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of like, I feel like the Bills are the underdog I can root for that has a legitimate chance. I don't know that the Browns do. We'll see. Look, if they get, they come out of the chute like they did against the Steelers this weekend, who knows what will happen. That is not my expectation, though. No. My expectation is this comes down. I think the Packers, the way Aaron Rodgers is playing right now, you talk about the zen, necessary to be a quarterback. You look at the two quarterbacks with that, he and Patrick Mahomes. But the Rams defense is formidable, and we'll see if they get through that. But I like the Bills just as a team.
Yeah, it's easy to root for them. It's easy to root for the community. And, for the Packers, we'll see about the week off. And, there's some teams I think that had that momentum and want to carry it through.
Andy Reid coming off the bye has been like, like the proverbial brick wall for opposition. So over the course of his career,
it's always compelling, no matter what the story, how it unfolds and how it ends.
I think the thing for us, Sigmund, is watching one game at a time and, realizing, oh, look, there's an ebb and flow to a game. There's a strategy within the strategy, right? I mean, all these things that you miss when you're, trying to consume everything at once is a great way to kind of wind down and
right.
And get back into the real life.
Yeah, Kate was saying that as we were watching all the playoff games last week. I'm like, is this too much football? Like 10 hours a day?
No, it's one at a time.
No, you just don't have to switch. If we can concentrate on one game, it's exciting. It's immersive. And the screws are going to get tighter. Folks, Bob Harris, as I like to say, Bob, your initials are carved into the cornerstone of this sandbox that we get to play in, Sirius XM, football diehards and all that stuff. But, if you're here listening to me right now, about Bob, about football guys, about all the fantasy football world, so many things going on. So we appreciate you. It's a pleasure and a privilege to serve. I'll be back tomorrow. AFC North. AFC North, you talk about the Yinzers, JJ Zacharyson.
There you go.
Have a Yinzer pity party. So that's, I'm sure, going to be real popular with everybody. So thank you, everyone, for giving us your time, especially Bob Harris. And as always, stay classy.